Moral win? Sure. Does a loss actually help Michigan State? Perhaps. Are we going to rail on Big Ten refs? Well, oh yeah. I mean, we watched the game. Of course we are. We're also going to get to some bracketology here too. We're going to talk about everything that's going on ahead of Selection Sunday. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On Spartans, your team in green and white 5 days a week, or during March Madness, it might as well just be every day this week. Yeah, we're going to keep the ball rolling here as we head to Selection Sunday and beyond. I'm your host, Matt Sheehan. You ever want to reach out, lockedonspartans@gmail.com is the best place to find us. Now, please rate, review, subscribe, comment below, do whatever makes you happy. Let's just get into the mix here. Michigan State 62, Purdue Boilermakers 67. You can probably already tell by now I'm not like super riled up with this loss, and that's probably for two reasons. One, we'll get to this later when we talk bracketology, but this actually may have helped Michigan State. I mean, not that I was rooting for a loss here. I still wanted to see Michigan State win, but as far as March losses go, that might have been the most helpful one that you could possibly find. We'll explain later. And then number two, it was pretty apparent early on how this game was going to be called. The Big Ten offices got the officiated game that they wanted, so good for them. Once you stomach the pill that, it's going to be another one of these Purdue games, you can absorb the loss a little earlier than usual. Now, we're not going to make it all about officiating here. Of course, we're going to rail on that a little bit further, but we're going to look inward. Okay, we're going to look inward because it wasn't a perfect game by Michigan State either. And yes, there were some positives to take away here. But why Michigan State lost this game? I'm going to go with shooting, but more specifically, first half shooting. Michigan State trotted into the locker room 9 of 27, just 2 of 8 from three-point land. And even more alarming, 1 of 6 on long twos. Now, I get it. Taking close twos to the rim against Purdue, against that giant 8'6" guy, it's a little difficult. But let's not kid ourselves. This is something that Michigan State has relied on a little too heavily, or in some cases, way too heavily throughout the whole season. Sometimes even passing up wide open three-point looks just to take a dribble and 2 steps inside the arc for a contested long two. And just to reiterate here, Michigan State 1 of 6 on long twos in the first half. That contributed to their 5-minute stretch in the first half with 0 points. It's going to be tough to win a game when you go that long, especially against a team as good as Purdue. And Jaden Akins, look, it looked good against Minnesota. He got started early. He was filling the hoop. We think, hey, he's breaking out of his slump right now. This is awesome. Maybe that was a mirage in the desert here because he started his game 0 of 6 shooting, and then he ended it, 2 of 11 shooting, 0 of 4 from three-point land. So, look, there's a lot of other little things Michigan State did or that Purdue did too, but by and large, the bulk of this was Michigan State not finding the bottom of the net. Now, we're going to talk positive here. And I know that this is going to sound like moral victory podcasting here, and that some people just don't want to hear any of it. Completely understand. But in Michigan State's finale before Selection Sunday, where they have a really, really, really good shot of hearing their name called, I got to say, that's as optimistic of a performance you can get in a loss. And Tom Izzo says that too. This tweet comes from Jim Comparoni. Tom Izzo, quote, "I'm really proud of my team. I don't throw that word around very often. I thought we battled a lot of people today. Purdue is a very good team, worthy of their ranking. They have just as good of a chance as anybody to win the national championship. So where does that put us? I don't know. We are going to find out." So, it's not just me. It's also the head coach who, speaks very rawly of his team time and time again. So he's feeling pretty optimistic after this loss. Now, let's talk about some other parts here. It's, the positives of the energy. I mean, I know that sounds so cliche. That sounds so like meatball heady, but really the energy was what you wanted to see from this team because unfortunately during this season, specifically in the last month, which is a really alarming time to see this, we have seen some lackadaisical performances or lack of focus. And no, that's not just me and these eyes telling you that. You've heard it from inside the locker room, too. We've heard the stories about Davis Smith trying to fire this team up before home games throughout the rest of the year. So, yes, this team does have that quote-unquote dog in them somewhere, and it was nice to see that because defensively, they really did good against Purdue. They held Purdue to 41% shooting from the field. Purdue leads the conference in field goal percentage at 49%, so they kept them at 8% below their season average. All right, Trey and Xavier Booker played late in the game. Now, this could be either taken glass half empty or glass half full with Trey Holloman. The glass half full on UC is, hey, they went to Trey Holloman down the stretch to play the 3 instead of Jaden Akins because he has been really good lately. Yesterday in the game against Minnesota, he had the team high plus minus. Today in this game against Purdue, he had the team high plus minus again. And say what you will about the plus minus stat, but it was such a gap today that he certainly earned his way into crunch time minutes. Now the glass half empty and you might be saying, well, yeah, we played Trey Holloman because Jaden Akins lost. Like he is just in outer space lately, and he is nowhere close to finding his jump shot, which, yeah, there's some validity to that, but at least you have a competent, if not a plus player to throw in there late in the game. And I got to say, really surprising to see Xavier Booker there late in the game, too. Now, sure, some of that could be because Mady Sissoko, he fouled out. Jackson Kohler also in foul trouble. But maybe also some of it was Xavier Booker actually gave you the best shot to win. Tom Izzo recognized that, and he wasn't even just on the floor, but they drew up a 3-pointer for Xavier Booker to potentially tie the game late. At Chuck E. Cheese, that shot would have counted. That went halfway down the rim. That would have hit the little laser on the pop shot, but that's not life. It popped out, unfortunately, but hey, not only is Xavier Booker playing late, he's getting sets drawn up for him late, and look, the late game sets, especially out of a timeout, were something that we have railed on here after the Indiana game. That, gee, it seems like out of every single timeout, it's Tyson Walker, pick and roll with no other action, and he's just out there to fight for his own life. They at least switched it up this time. I will say, like, I'm not going to get too carried away. Like, it's a foregone conclusion that Michigan State is just done scoring out of timeouts for the rest of the year. I can't remember the last week they've done that, but nevertheless, some optimism here. And hey, just to throw this cherry on top too, second game in a row where they had at least 18 points in transition. That's some good old school Michigan State basketball, something that we have been drastically lacking so far this year. Now, of course, look, we talked about it, right, guys? The Michigan State shooting wasn't too great. All right, that's a big reason why they lost. But it's impossible to talk about that game and not look at the officiating, right? And hey, if this is the first time you're watching the show, of course you're just going to go down the road of like, oh, wow, classic Sparty, blaming officiating. But no, guys, if you've listened to the show or have watched it, you know that rarely we point out officiating, but it is a spectacle to watch Big Ten officials treat Purdue the way they do. Now, hey, this was a perfect game for the conference. I'm sure the people in the C-suite over there in Big Ten media headquarters, whatever you want to call it, is very happy with how it went today. Purdue needs to keep their 1 seed for the tournament. Michigan State is most likely in the tournament regardless, so this had to be a heavily slanted, officiated game. And that's exactly what they got. You knew immediately, right from the jump, what kind of a game this was going to be, where in 2 of Zach Edey's first 3 buckets, he lumbers his shoulder right into the Michigan State defender. A foul for anyone else, not just in the conference, but probably in the entire country. But they just let Zach Edey get away with that for some odd reason, as if the guy already standing at 7'5" needs any more help on top of all that. So you knew what kind of a game it was going to be. We've seen it happen all throughout the season, not just Purdue against Michigan State, but Purdue against any other Big Ten opponent. And there's some stats to back that up here a little bit. It just is what it is. So you just had to sit there for the next 2 hours and, well, just watch this game that was essentially 8-on-5. Now, the fact that Purdue was in the bonus with 12 minutes and 30 seconds left in the first half, that also leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And Tom Izzo, he's interviewed between timeouts, and he said, I'm disgusted with the officiating. And of course, hey, rival fans, opponents are going to say, oh, there goes Tom again, just crying about the officiating like he always does. But if you have at least one functioning eyeball, you can see that the game is called drastically differently for Purdue. And it has been the whole season. There's only been 3 games this year in Big Ten play when Zach Edey, a guy that plays center, a guy that plays a position that gets their fouls called at a higher rate than any other position on the court, he's only had 3 games where he's had 4 fouls called on him. On the other end of the court, He's had 5 games this year where he takes at least 15 free throws. 2 of those games, he shot 20-plus free throws in Big Ten play. It's crazy. I cannot wrap my head around it, and I see time to time online people saying, oh, well, the refs just don't know how to call Zach Edey. He makes it too hard to officiate. No, he does not. He makes it substantially easier to officiate the games than anyone else because he has massive, massive limbs. It's impossible to not see where his shoulders or elbows are going. And oftentimes they are going right into the face of other defenders or around the bodies on some hooks, or even in reviews when Mahdi was called for his 5th personal foul, they're reviewing for a hook and hold on Mahdi. And would you look at that? Who's actually doing the hooking and the holding? Well, it's Zach Edey. That's crazy that he gets the benefit of the doubt all game. So will it burn Purdue in the tournament? Very well could. We'll see what kind of officiating crew they get, and 3 referees that actually want to use their 6 combined eyeballs in the game. We'll see. That's asking a lot. And that's not to say that's the only reason Purdue is good. I do want to give them their flowers. They are a good team. Zach Edey is good beyond just being able to do whatever he wants out there. His passing is as elite as it gets for a big man. But, man, you take away that officiating. Guys, I think we're talking about Michigan State playing the game tomorrow. Again, should have shot the ball better, should have been better with your shot selection, but whoo boy, that was some 8-on-5 basketball. And it wasn't just all Zach Edey, like that charge they called on Tyson Walker late in the game where the guy's foot was clearly inside the arc. Yep, that hurts too. And then, well, just for sake of consistency, hey, anyone else remember a few weeks ago when Jaden Akins said a single word to Illinois' bench and he was teed up? Okay, Fletcher Lawyer hits a big 3-pointer today. Big, just stones on that 3-pointer. Massive shot. But then proceeds to tell the entire Michigan State roster where to jam it after hitting that 3 right in front of the ref, and he doesn't want to do anything about it. Look, would that have been an incredibly soft technical foul call? Absolutely. That would have been outrageous. But let's try consistency in the Big Ten, not just for how you officiate big men against big men, but just what is a tech and what isn't in this conference. So, again, maybe that's getting a little nitpicky, but that is some consistency right there. Jaden Akins saying one word against someone else, just going on and on about the one shot they hit, and there you have it. So, anyway, we're going to get into a little bit of bracketology here again because it's very important. We got some great answers from our friend Joe Cook-Sugar of 131 Sports. We're going to talk about how much we should be sweating on Selection Sunday, or if there's really no point of sweating at all. But first, you need to talk your ear off about Amazon Fire TV. Now, Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have Fire TV. Now, Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences too. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all of your game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date with all the latest in the world of sports. We're talking March Madness, NBA, MLB, and so much more, not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos too. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this one. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Also need to talk your ears off about LinkedIn Jobs. Folks, especially small business owners out there, whether you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are just right for the role. That's why you have to go check out LinkedIn Jobs. Now, LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster, and my favorite part, for free. Now, LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals. That is with a B, 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else, and LinkedIn does all that while making the process super easy and intuitive. LinkedIn knows that small business owners might be wearing so many hats that, hey, you just might not even have the time to resource that hire. So join the 2.5 million small businesses that use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions, that's right, they apply. All right, let's get into some bracket talk here. And really quick, thanks a lot, guys, for chewing up some of your Friday or Saturday morning, whenever you're going to be listening to this. Really do appreciate you guys listening here on Locked on Spartans. So This is a gentleman we've had on a few days ago. His name is Joe Cook Sugar. He runs a bracketology site called 131 Sports. And we don't gas this guy up just because he's nice, answers all my questions, joins the show every once in a while. But no, as some of you know, he is the second best bracketologist in the nation, according to Bracket Matrix. All right, this guy knows his stuff. So after this game, I DM'd him 5 questions, and we're just going to go through my questions and his answers. I thought this would be just an easier way to get, just to get some information out there than having to work around his schedule to have him on. But here we go. The first question was an easy one. Is MSU a lock in your opinion? Do we have to sweat it all on Selection Sunday, guys? Joe writes in, I would consider MSU a lock, yes. If you want to compare to Rutgers from last season, Bracket Matrix had them as the third to last team in. A shock they missed? Sure. However, MSU was around the 7th or 9th away from the cut line going into that game, and they went toe-to-toe with the likely number 1 overall seed. If I had a percentage, I would say there's a 97% chance they make the field. Now, if you're like me and you're going to let that 3% bother you the whole weekend, have at it. But sane and healthy and normal Michigan State fans will go to bed Friday night and Saturday night knowing that Michigan State will have their name called on Sunday. But that's how Joe sees it. And the Rutgers comparison that he threw out there, we've talked about it in some previous shows. But last year, it was Rutgers that seemed like a lock going into February, right? And then they lost 7 of their last 10 games, stumbled into Selection Sunday. And even though of the 219 bracketologists out there, only 11 had them off. Well, we know how that ended. Rutgers did not make it. But Michigan State, much higher net than Rutgers had last year. And just like Joe said, 7th to 9th away from the cut line. So Rutgers was just 3 away from the cut line. Now, that might seem a little confusing to people that aren't so dialed into bracketology, right? So my next question was, when people ask why MSU is a lock at 19-14, what's the biggest reason? He said, why are they a lock at 19-14? The number one thing that comes to mind is the strength of schedule. They've played 33 games, and 23 of them are quad 1 or quad 2. The committee eats that up. So then we just got down to brass tacks. I said, hey, what percent would you give each seed for Michigan State roughly? He said, if we ignore the 3% chance they miss the tourney, a 9 seed is at 10%, a 10 seed is at 80%, and an 11 seed is at 10%. That's why at the start of the show, I said that a loss may have helped Michigan State here because I'm a coward. I'm a wuss. Call me what you want. I would much rather play in that 7 versus 10 game and then get the 2 seed in the next round than I would that 9 versus 8 game and potentially get buzzsawed by any of these 1 seeds, because the drop off from 1 seeds to the 2 seeds this year, I think, is drastic. So maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, but that is where I see it, where after Michigan State loses this game, I'm not throwing stuff against the wall or, lighting my hair on fire. It's like, okay, well, if it turns out that 80% is true and we are likely going to get a 10 seed, kind of maybe just sort of worked out in the end. Now, I was curious about this. What if disaster struck yesterday? If MSU lost against Minnesota, what would the picture be looking like? Now, Joe writes in, if MSU lost to Minnesota, I think they'd probably be in the play-in game, and they would their in the field percentage would be closer to 60% than 97% right now. And then we ended it with, hey, is it worth rooting for any other teams or against other teams this weekend, or is it not even worth our energy? He says, I do think it is worth rooting against other teams, namely to try to stay on the 10 seed line and avoid dropping into the play-in game or the first 4 games. Check out the 4 teams around MSU on either side of the true seed line and root against any that are actively playing. And then he goes on to name 8 teams. St. John's, all right, they play against UConn later. Colorado, they play against Washington State. Nebraska will play against Indiana. New Mexico, Virginia, Pitt, Texas A&M, and Providence. So it's just anyone around the bubble. Just be a hater. Just root against them, because if 3% disaster is going to strike, well, it's going to require all 8 of those teams winning a game or 2. So we don't want to see that happen over here. So there it is, guys. Again, just a little update there with the bracketologies. Of course, had to riff about this game. So there we go, guys. I mean, I'm walking out of here kind of optimistic, as crazy as that sounds, but that was a nice showing against what will be the number 1 overall seed potentially in March Madness. So that makes me a loser for going all moral victory. If you guys have listened to the show long enough this year, you know we've been doing anything but that the entire season. But heading into March, that's as good as it's possibly going to get there. So there we go, gang. We will be back on Selection Sunday. Another shorter episode on Selection Sunday. But until then, hey, enjoy your weekend, guys. Love you all. Go Green.